Jared never imagined that his quiet, ordinary life would change forever in a single night. He'd been sitting on his small balcony staring at the stars when a strange light flashed across the backyard. Curious, he stepped outside, heart beating faster, and saw a small figure crouched near the bushes. At first he thought it was some lost animal, but as it moved he realized it was something else entirely. The creature was unlike anything Jared had ever seen. It was slender and delicate, with smooth silver skin that seemed to shimmer in the moonlight. Its large sapphire blue eyes blinked at him with a mixture of fear and wonder. There was a quiet intelligence in those eyes, a depth that made Jared stop in his tracks. It made a soft humming sound, almost musical, and he could feel the fear radiating from it, a tiny heartbeat of panic that mirrored his own. "Hey, are you okay?" Jared asked cautiously. His voice sounded strange in the still night, and yet he couldn't stop speaking. The alien tilted its head, studied him, and hesitated. Then, with slow curiosity, it extended a delicate hand toward his. Jared took it gently. The touch was cold, but not unpleasant. There was trust in that moment, fragile and new, like a seed being planted in the soil of their shared silence. Jared decided to name her Lyra, after the constellation shining brightly above them. She had no home, no family she wanted to reveal. She seemed lost, alone in a world that must have felt vast and terrifying. Yet despite her fragility, there was a quiet grace in the way she moved, a careful awareness that made Jared feel protective without even thinking. The next few days were strange and wonderful. Lyra followed Jared around his small apartment, helping with chores she didn't fully understand. She learned quickly, picking up small tasks with uncanny efficiency. Sometimes she would pause and touch ordinary objects as if she were discovering them for the first time. Watching her, Jared felt both amazement and tenderness. It was like seeing the world anew through someone else's eyes, someone from the stars. He knew he had to be careful. Aliens were not supposed to live openly on Earth. If anyone found out about Lyra, she could be taken away, studied, or worse. Yet the thought of sending her back into the cold night, alone and scared, made his chest tighten painfully. She had trusted him, and that trust now weighed on him like a responsibility he could never escape. One evening, as they sat side by side on the balcony, Lyra reached for his hand. Her fingers were cold, but her grip was firm. Jared's heart raced. In that small, quiet gesture there was a silent connection, a language that went beyond words. He realized that he wasn't just protecting her because of duty. He cared for her deeply in a way he didn't fully understand yet. But that night, a storm rolled in. Thunder shook the apartment, lightning lit up the sky, and rain pelted the windows. Jared had been working late when he heard a sudden crash from the kitchen. He rushed in and found Lyra tangled in a mess of broken glass. She tried to vanish instinctively, but he caught her hand gently, just enough to hold her in place. Her sapphire eyes widened with panic, her body trembling. "I won't hurt you," Jared whispered. "I just want to help." Slowly, hesitantly, she relaxed. He guided her away from the shards, keeping his movements soft and careful. For the first time, Jared truly understood how delicate she was, not just in body but in spirit. She had come from a place he could never imagine, and yet, here she was, trusting him in a moment of fear. That night, as the storm raged outside, Jared made a silent promise. He would protect Lyra. He would keep her safe. Not because she was an alien, but because she had become a part of his life. She was Lyra, and the universe had somehow placed her in his hands. And as he looked at her curled up quietly on the couch, he felt a strange, fierce hope, the kind that could grow into something extraordinary. Little did he know, this was only the beginning. The bond forming between them would face tests, dangers, and discoveries that neither of them could have imagined. But for now, the night held a quiet magic, and Jared knew one thing for certain: he would never let her go. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the small apartment windows, warming the room and Lyra's silver skin. She sat quietly on the couch, watching Jared move around the kitchen, preparing breakfast. Her eyes followed his every gesture, curious but cautious. She had stayed the night, trusting him enough to remain close, but the memory of the glass incident lingered. Her body trembled slightly whenever he approached too quickly, and Jared noticed it. He tried not to rush her. "Coffee?" he asked gently, holding a steaming cup in front of her. Lyra sniffed it curiously and tilted her head. She didn't drink, But she let the warmth of the cup brush her fingers. Jared smiled. Patience was all they had right now. He couldn't force her to feel safe, but he could give her space to learn what safety felt like. Days passed and life slowly began to settle into an odd rhythm. Lyra followed him silently, helping with small chores she had learned to perform. She could clean faster than anyone he had ever met, but she always did it with care, as if each motion mattered. When Jared cooked, she would hover nearby, watching every movement, sometimes reaching out to mimic him. Her curiosity was endless, and Jared found himself marveling at her mind. She understood the world differently, seeing patterns he had never noticed, noticing details he had overlooked. Despite her growing confidence, there were moments when fear overtook her. Loud noises like a car honking outside or a dropped pan made her flinch, her body shrinking into itself. Jared would gently place his hand on hers or wrap an arm around her, whispering, "It's okay. You're safe." Slowly, she began to trust his presence. Each day, her eyes lost a fraction of their panic and gained a little more warmth. One afternoon, while Jared was at the window fixing a broken latch, Lyra tried something new. She reached out to him, but this time she didn't hesitate. Her tiny hand touched his arm, then his shoulder, and finally rested on his hand. He froze for a moment, feeling an electric warmth run through him. She looked up at him with those deep sapphire eyes, and in them he saw gratitude, curiosity, and something more. Something unspoken that made his heart ache with tenderness. Then came the first real test of their bond. A loud knock sounded at the apartment door. Jared's stomach tightened. Visitors were rare, and in his mind, he pictured the authorities discovering Lyra. He motioned for her to hide behind the couch, but Lyra didn't move. Her eyes met his, wide and questioning. She wanted to understand, to trust him completely. Jared's heart swelled. He opened the door carefully. A neighbor needed to borrow a tool. The interaction was brief, but it left Jared shaking slightly. Lyra watched quietly, her head tilted as if trying to process human behavior. When the door closed, Jared exhaled slowly and looked at her. "See, nothing bad happened," he said softly. She reached for his hand again, and this time she didn't pull away. That night, as they sat on the couch watching the city lights, Lyra leaned her head against his shoulder. Her breathing was slow and steady, a sign of comfort he had only dreamed of. He stroked her silver hair gently, marveling at the miracle of her trust. For a creature from another world, she had allowed herself to be vulnerable. She had allowed herself to care. But Jared knew the world outside their little apartment was not kind. People feared what they did not understand. If anyone discovered Lyra, they could take her away, study her, or worse. That thought made his chest tighten. He vowed silently to protect her no matter the cost. He would face anything, fear, danger, or even his own doubts, because she had given him something priceless. Her trust. As they sat together in the quiet, Jared realized something profound. Lyra had changed him. She had shown him that courage was not just about facing enemies or danger, it was about opening your heart, even when the world seemed too big, too frightening. And he knew, deep in his soul, that he would never let her go. Jared had begun to feel a quiet rhythm in their lives. Mornings were spent making breakfast together, Lyra learning the smallest tasks, Jared teaching her slowly, and evenings were spent sitting on the balcony, staring at the stars. It felt safe, almost ordinary, but he knew it was fragile. The world outside did not welcome beings like Lyra. One afternoon, as Jared returned from work, he noticed a strange van parked across the street. Men in dark uniforms were scanning the buildings carefully. His heart thumped in his chest. He had thought he could keep her hidden, that their little apartment was safe. But now fear wrapped around him like a cold hand. He rushed inside, careful not to alert Lyra. She was in the kitchen, arranging utensils, humming softly. Jared's voice was low but urgent. "Lyra, we have to be careful. Someone is outside. Do not open the door for anyone." She looked up, eyes wide, and nodded, trembling. Though she had learned to trust him, fear still ran deep in her veins. The men outside lingered longer than he expected. They were methodical, patient, and Jared knew they were not ordinary people. His mind raced. He could not allow them to find her. Lyra had no weapons, no way to defend herself. And he had only one way to protect her: cunning, patience, and courage he hadn't known he possessed. Jared spent the night quietly moving shadows. drawing curtains and whispering to Lyra. She clung to him sometimes, and he would hold her close, stroking her silvery hair. "I won't let them take you," he promised over and over. The words felt heavier each time he said them, but he meant them with every part of his being. The next day, Jared decided they had to leave. He packed essentials in a small bag: food, water, blankets, a few personal items. Lyra watched, her eyes wide with fear and confusion. She didn't fully understand why they had to leave, but she trusted him enough to follow. When he offered his hand, she took it without hesitation. The journey was tense. Every street, every corner made Jared's heart pound. He guided Lyra through quiet alleys and back roads, avoiding the patrols of the unknown men. Lyra clung to him not just for guidance but for reassurance. He could feel her fear in the squeeze of her hand, her tiny frame trembling against his side, and he squeezed back, silently promising that he would never let harm touch her. That night they found a small abandoned cabin on the edge of the forest. Jared lit a fire carefully, keeping watch over the shadows. Lyra sat beside him, shivering slightly. He draped a blanket over her shoulders and she leaned into him. "We're safe. For now," he whispered, though the words felt fragile. As they sat together, Jared realized something important. Lyra's trust had become his greatest responsibility, and also his greatest strength. Protecting her was not just about hiding her from danger. It was about believing in her, believing in them both. She had given him hope, courage, and even love in the smallest, simplest ways: a touch of her hand, a glance of her eyes, a hum that vibrated with unspoken emotion. Suddenly, a sound outside shattered the quiet. A twig snapped under someone's foot. Jared stiffened, pulling Lyra behind him. Her eyes widened, fear glinting in their sapphire depths. He whispered urgently, "Stay close to me. Do not move." For the first time, the danger was not abstract. It was real, immediate, and terrifying. And yet in that fear, Jared felt a surge of determination. He would not let anyone take her. Not now, not ever. Lyra was more than an alien, more than a being from another world. She was part of his life, part of his heart, and he would fight with everything he had to keep her safe. As the night deepened and shadows danced around the cabin, Jared held Lyra close. Outside, the footsteps lingered, but inside there was warmth, trust, and an unspoken promise. Whatever came, they would face it together. The night air was cold, heavy with tension. Jared held Lyra close, listening to the crunching of footsteps outside the cabin. His heart pounded, but he refused to show fear. Every muscle in his body was ready, every thought focused on keeping her safe. Lyra pressed against him, small and trembling, and he felt a deep surge of protectiveness. "You're safe with me," Jared whispered, brushing a strand of her silver hair behind her ear. Her sapphire eyes glimmered in the firelight, wide with trust and fear. She didn't respond with words. She never had. But the quiet hum she made told him she believed him even in the darkness. Suddenly, a shadow moved across the edge of the clearing. One of the men from the van was scouting, searching. Jared's instinct screamed at him to run, but he couldn't leave Lyra behind. He had to act carefully. Slowly, he put a finger to his lips, signaling her to stay. Lyra nodded slightly, eyes alert, her body tense. Jared's mind raced. How could he protect her if they found the cabin? He realized then that Lyra wasn't just fragile and vulnerable. There was something different about her, something he hadn't fully understood. She wasn't human, but she had skills, senses, and perhaps power. "Lyra, I need you to stay calm," he whispered. "Just trust me." She tilted her head, and for a brief moment Jared felt a connection stronger than fear, an unspoken understanding. Then it happened. One of the men tried the cabin door, forcing it open. Jared stepped in front of Lyra, but before he could react further, she moved. It was subtle at first. A ripple of energy shimmered around her, like the air itself was bending. The intruder froze, his eyes wide, as a gentle but undeniable force pushed him back. Lyra's sapphire eyes glowed faintly, and her hum grew louder, resonating in the room like a song from another world. Jared could hardly believe it. Lyra, small and delicate, was protecting them both. The man stumbled backward, dropping his flashlight. Lyra's body radiated confidence and power, a quiet strength that seemed impossible in such a fragile frame. Jared felt awe mixed with relief. She wasn't just an alien who needed protection. She could fight in her own way. "Lyra, it's okay," he whispered, calming her. He realized she wasn't attacking him or the men out of anger. It was instinct, a protective response. He felt a surge of emotion he couldn't name, pride, love, and wonder all at once. The man outside scrambled, shouting orders, but he didn't enter again. Lyra's hum continued, a soft melodic vibration that seemed to create a shield around the cabin. Jared stood behind her, holding her hand gently, marveling at the creature she was. She wasn't just his responsibility anymore. She was a partner, a being whose strength he could rely on. As the men retreated, Jared felt Lyra relax slightly. The glow in her eyes dimmed, the hum softened, and she leaned against him. He stroked her hair, whispering, "You're amazing. You saved us." She made a soft musical sound, her way of acknowledging his words. In that moment, Jared realized that trust went both ways. He had protected her by staying close, guiding her and believing in her. And she had protected him in a way he had never expected. That night, as they sat by the fire, the danger outside seemed smaller. Jared looked at Lyra and felt something shift. She wasn't just a fragile, frightened alien anymore. She was a being of incredible power, but also incredible heart. Together, they could face anything, and for the first time, Jared felt a deep certainty. They were not just surviving, they were stronger together, bound by trust, courage, and an unspoken bond that went beyond words. Whatever the world threw at them next, they would face it side by side. The forest was quiet now, but Jared's heart would not settle. He and Lyra had spent the night in the cabin, and she had slept peacefully for the first time since arriving in his life. But he knew this peace was fragile. The men from the van would not give up easily. They had seen her power, and they would come back, stronger and more determined. Jared spent the morning checking the perimeter, making small barriers and noise traps, but he knew it was only a temporary solution. "Lyra, we need to be ready," he said softly, kneeling beside her. She watched him with her sapphire eyes, alert and attentive. She didn't speak, but she didn't need to. The understanding between them had grown so strong that words were almost unnecessary. By afternoon, the sound of engines broke the quiet. Jared's stomach dropped. The men were back, and they had brought reinforcements. He grabbed Lyra's hand and led her to the back of the cabin. "Stay close. Trust me," he whispered. She squeezed his hand in response, and he felt a wave of determination. Together, they could face this. The men approached carefully, but Jared and Lyra were ready. As the first figure reached the door, Lyra stepped forward. A faint shimmer of energy surrounded her. Her hum began softly, then grew louder, resonating with the forest itself. The men hesitated, confused and afraid. Jared watched in awe as Lyra's tiny form radiated strength that made even the strongest human instinctively step back. Jared realized that the bond they shared had given Lyra courage she hadn't needed to show before. Her fear was gone, replaced by resolve. She wasn't just protecting herself anymore, she was protecting both of them. The men tried to push forward, but a wave of energy from Lyra held them back, unyielding, unbreakable. One man broke through, lunging toward the cabin, but Lyra reacted instantly. Her hands glowed with a bright light, and the intruder froze, suspended in midair for a brief moment. Jared's breath caught in his throat. He had never seen power like this, raw and controlled at the same time. Lyra's sapphire eyes shone brighter than ever, filled with emotion, fear for him, determination to protect, and an unspoken plea for them to survive together. "Lyra, you're incredible," Jared whispered, his voice trembling. He wanted to help, but he knew she needed to act. He could only stand behind her, offering trust and support. The men outside realized they were outmatched. One by one they retreated, but not without leaving a warning. Jared could hear the distant shouts and see the lights of their vehicles disappearing into the forest. Lyra's hum softened, her energy fading, and she collapsed into his arms, exhausted but unharmed. Jared held her close, stroking her hair, feeling the warmth of her body against his. "It's okay. It's over. For now," he whispered. Lyra made a soft melodic sound, a mixture of relief and trust. She looked up at him, and for the first time Jared saw a glimmer of pure happiness in her sapphire eyes. She was safe, and they had survived together. That night, as they sat by the fire, Jared realized how much he had come to rely on her, not just for protection, but for the courage and hope she gave him. She had taught him that strength was not always about size or force. Sometimes it was about trust, connection, and believing in someone else enough to face the impossible together. Lyra leaned against him, her hum quiet and steady. Jared felt a surge of emotion, love, gratitude, and a fierce promise. He would never let anyone take her. Not now, not ever. She was more than an alien in his care. She was part of his life, part of his heart. And together, they were unstoppable. And as the fire crackled, Jared knew one thing with certainty. Whatever danger came next, they would face it side by side, stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, stronger than any force the universe could send their way. The sun rose over the forest, painting the cabin in golden light. For the first time in days, Jared and Lyra felt a moment of peace. The men from the van had retreated, at least for now, and the forest seemed quiet, safe. Lyra sat by the small window, her silver skin glowing softly in the morning sun, and Jared watched her in silence. "Are you hungry?" he asked softly, offering a small meal he had prepared. Lyra tilted her head and approached cautiously. She did not speak, but her eyes shone with curiosity and trust. She took the food gently from his hand, her fingers brushing his for just a moment, and Jared felt a warmth in his chest he couldn't name. Days of hiding had taught them both the value of small moments. Jared and Lyra spent the mornings tending to the cabin and the evenings talking quietly, sharing gestures and hums that only they could understand. Every touch, every glance carried meaning. Lyra had started to show more of her personality. Playful curiosity, gentle care, and a quiet humor that made Jared laugh. She had begun to trust him fully, letting herself be seen as she truly was, without fear or hesitation. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Lyra reached out and placed her hand on Jared's. Her sapphire eyes met his, and for a long moment they simply looked at each other. No words were needed. In that gaze, Jared felt the depth of her trust, the connection that had grown between them stronger than anything he had ever known. He realized that protecting her was no longer about fear or responsibility. It was about love, respect, and the bond they shared. Lyra's hum filled the room, soft and melodic, as she leaned closer to him. Jared held her carefully, feeling the rise and fall of her small chest against his. She was so fragile yet so strong. She had faced danger with courage he had never imagined, and now, in these quiet moments, he understood that her strength was not just in her abilities. It was in her heart, her willingness to trust, and her belief in him. The night outside was calm, and for the first time, Jared allowed himself to imagine a future with Lyra. Not just survival, but something more. He could see them exploring the world together, learning from each other and facing challenges side by side. The thought filled him with hope, a feeling he hadn't dared to feel since she had arrived. But trust, Jared knew, was fragile. Even as he held her close, he could not ignore the reality of the world outside the forest. People feared what they did not understand, and if Lyra's presence was discovered, they would be in danger again. He resolved silently to teach her, to prepare her for whatever might come. She was capable of so much, and together they could face anything. As the fire crackled, Lyra rested her head on his shoulder, her hum soft and steady. Jared stroked her hair gently, feeling a deep gratitude. She had chosen to trust him completely, and in return he had promised to protect her, to stand by her no matter what. Their bond was no longer about survival alone, it was about connection, about two beings from different worlds finding understanding and care in each other. That night, Jared whispered into the quiet cabin, "You don't have to be afraid anymore. Lyra, I'm here always." Lyra's hum grew louder, resonating with warmth and affection. She nestled closer, and Jared felt a profound sense of peace. For the first time since she had arrived, the fear and danger seemed distant. The bond between them was unshakable, forged through trust, courage, and shared experience. And as the stars glimmered above, Jared realized something beautiful. They were no longer just human and alien. They were partners, companions, and family in a way that transcended worlds. Whatever challenges the future held, they would face them together, hearts intertwined, stronger than fear, stronger than anything that tried to pull them apart. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and earth. Jared woke to find Lyra already awake, standing by the window, her sapphire eyes scanning the forest. For a moment she seemed delicate, almost ethereal, but Jared knew better. She was strong, brave, and unbreakable in ways most humans could never understand. "Good morning," he whispered, stepping closer. Lyra turned and gave him a small soft hum, a greeting, a reassurance, a bond only they shared. Jared smiled and took her hand. It felt natural now, not fragile but steady, like an unspoken promise between two souls. The peace they had fought to find was precious. The men from the van could return, the world could remain fearful, but inside the forest in the little cabin, they had built something no one could take from them. Trust, connection, love. That day, Jared decided it was time to step beyond hiding. He wanted to show Lyra the beauty of the world, even if only for a moment without fear pressing against them. They walked slowly along the forest path, the sunlight painting patterns on the ground. Lyra's steps were cautious at first, but then, with Jared's hand guiding hers, she began to move more freely. Her hum filled the air, soft and musical, echoing through the trees. As they reached a small clearing, Lyra paused and looked at him. Jared saw something unspoken in her eyes, gratitude, wonder, and a trust deeper than words could express. He knelt down, meeting her gaze. "We can face anything together," he said softly. "You and me, always." Lyra stepped closer, resting her tiny hand against his cheek. In that simple gesture, Jared felt an overwhelming surge of emotion, love, awe, and a fierce determination. He realized that their bond was more than survival or protection. It was about understanding, acceptance, and the courage to believe in each other, no matter how impossible the world seemed. Suddenly, the hum from Lyra grew stronger, resonating like a song of power and harmony. Jared felt the air around them shift, alive with energy. It was a quiet strength, a shield that seemed to stretch beyond them, a promise that no harm could reach them while they stood together. Lyra's sapphire eyes shone with an inner light, and Jared realized that she had embraced her true self fully. No fear, no hesitation, only trust and courage. They spent hours in that clearing, simply being. Jared taught her the small joys of human life, how the wind could feel like a gentle touch, how sunlight could warm the soul, how laughter could lift even the heaviest hearts. Lyra responded with fascination, curiosity, and moments of playful joy that made Jared laugh in a way he hadn't in years. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, Jared and Lyra returned to the cabin. She leaned against him, her hum soft and steady, and he held her close. For the first time since her arrival, Jared felt complete certainty. Whatever challenges lay ahead, whatever dangers waited in the shadows of the world, they would face them together. And in that quiet, perfect moment, Jared realized something profound. Humanity was not just the strength of one, but the courage to protect, trust, and love across boundaries, across worlds. Lyra had come into his life as a fragile stranger, but she had become a partner, a companion, a symbol of hope. Together they were unstoppable. Jared whispered into the evening, "You're not alone anymore. Never alone. Not ever." Lyra's hum responded, gentle and unwavering, a melody of connection, courage, and belonging. And as the stars twinkled above, Jared held her close, knowing that their journey had only just begun. But whatever came next, they would face it side by side, hearts bound by trust, and a love that transcended worlds. For in that bond, Jared understood the true meaning of heroism, not the battles won alone, not the fears faced in silence, but the courage to protect, to care, and to stand together, human and alien, forever side by side.